Hooey. Quite a doozy we got ourselves here. Alright, people. Part 3 to the guide. Part 3. I'm not gonna lie with you, I think this format of me doing the different parts of the video, I think this would be a little bit easier for people to digest the information. Because the thing is about this is that I was not able to fit at least almost an hour and a half worth of footage, and I know everybody's not trying to watch a meaty, really meaty video, unless they need to. So, with that out the way, I just want to say thank you for sticking by if you made it this far and actually watched all the guides in order. This is probably going to be the final one. This is probably going to be the final one, unless I'm going to eat my words here as I'm editing this. This part of the video, we're going to be covering over the last little bit of the mindset. We're going to be covering over how to learn your range, stay on your toes. Also, how to play Nnoitora effectively, what not to do with Nnoitora. I'll be touching on some of the matchups that Nnoi is advantageous in and disadvantageous in as we cover through the video. And after that, we'll have the closing thoughts. I know. It's been a long ride. With that out of the way, let's get right to it. Now, when playing Nnoi effectively and learning how to play him correctly are kind of somewhat the same, I guess you could say. You can play Nnoitora correctly, but it's still not effective. It's always going to come down to the matchup knowledge. So, starting off, base is really important for Nnoitora. Sure, he's one of the more of those, I guess you could say, air quotations, robbery characters, but fundamentally, anything with him, you're really going to get the most value out of base. So always learning how to get a good, strong start is easy with this character. So for squishier units like Rukia, Ulquiorra, any of those specific characters, you need to try to get to white as possible, as quick as you can. Get your Evo as fast as you possibly can. Personally, me, I'd always like to wait till my opponent is at least half HP, or I am at least half HP, so I'm also getting meter at the same time. Or, a smart way you could play this is by limiting the amount of raw heavy combos you can do and just throwing in Hakugekis. Sure, you can go for, let's say, maybe like a yellow if you want to do like a SFA yellow into heavy combo to guarantee your cash back. Or any other scenario could count for that as well. Now, when it comes to certain matchups where you got to play defensive, like let's say Yama, Dangai, any of those specific matchups, like Kamamura with his Sig, Renji, I guess you could say Stark is a fine example if he's constantly doing dash light and he's just controlling the space, making it an absolute hassle for you to get in. Then I'd say the best bet is to just simply go for white. Don't even go for yellow. With other characters that have, like, let's say a 6-piece that are tanky or just overall shit damage, like, let's say Chad, Yama, Kenny, you want to try to white as best as you can. Nnoi takes forever for him to get Evo, so always keeping that in mind is crucial when playing this character. I did touch on this earlier, is what to do and what not to do when you're pressuring your opponent, especially in scenarios like, say, if you do light into step and dash light. If they ho-ho it or they at least do a double, they are going to punish you. So always having a window to do dash light is a good thing, but there are scenarios where it could bite you over, especially when you have your opponent conditioned to ho-ho. It can seem a little bit counterintuitive. There's a lot of moving parts to this character that a lot of other people, if you have good fundamentals, you could just play him simply bare bones and it would work fine. But other characters that try to at least get the most out of this character, just something to keep in mind of. His dash light is, as I said last video, his bread and butter. So just because you always have a window to do it doesn't mean that you should. Sometimes playing patient is the way to go. Sometimes throwing out a heavy is what you want to do. Sometimes maybe just simply backstepping or holding block is what you want to do. Guaranteeing cashback is absolutely crucial as well. Learning your Oki is another thing to keep in mind as well. Just simply throwing out buttons just for the sake of it and getting the wrong read could cost you, especially in matchups where you need it. So specifically, how do I put this? There are a lot of advantageous matchups for Nnoitora. A lot. You will find this is a common trend that a lot of top players consider him as a top 1 contender for the game. Top 5, I don't see him any spot lower than that, which I do have to agree. Specific matchups that he really tends to thrive in are characters that have very limited range, very limited options that can get in. They don't have a great response for a lot of things. Like, let's say, Yuhaba is a glaring example of a heavily advantageous matchup. Aizen with his armor, sure, a good Nnoitora will make it hell for a good Aizen, but a good Aizen, it's not unbearable, per se. I've fought up against a lot of good Aizens, and they've definitely made things annoying for me, as they should, but their uptime on their armor is a big double-edged sword. They have no choice but to do it, which is what you want on Nnoi. Just utilizing your unblockables is key in those matchups where characters have armor. Anything of the sort. And characters that thrive off of neutral, like, let's say, Stark, while controlling with his dash lights, his heavies, his SFAs. And then you go into Evo, where he has his Sig, his Wolves, just playing patient overall. You really won't have to worry about that if you play it correctly, but it is something to keep in mind as well. If there's a character that's controlling the neutral really well, like, let's say, maybe a Unohana, you will make it very hard for her early game. How you play against her is by abusing her early game. Her dash light can be an issue in Awakening and Evo, but always calling it out, like, let's say maybe a Sig, or let's say a Heavy, or you catch it, or let's say if you try to punish their approach and they step in and you do a SP2, that's a free punish for you. You can do that. But characters that play off of the neutral, I'd say it's best to play patient in. And getting to that, we also have characters like Ikkaku, which is a very special case. He's not necessarily a character that plays off of the neutral. He's really good at controlling space. He's really good at making you whiff and mixing up. However, that matchup with Nnoi is, if it wasn't obvious enough, pretty close. Even with the new changes to Nnoi and even with the new changes to Ikkaku, that is something to keep in mind. Learning not to spam SFA. That is something I cannot preface any more than I probably already have. It is a good tool, but you are left wide open if there is a character that can backstep and immediately go for a grab punish. Sure, there can be few scenarios, like let's say maybe Ichibei backsteps and he goes for SFA or dash light. Depending on the timing, he can totally go for a punish there. Other times you'll have chances to block. So if you were to whiff something with Nnoi, which is another thing I touched on earlier, is to learn your range so that can avoid this problem. You won't have to worry about whiffing if you know your range correctly. And not only that, if you know the Oki and the mix-up scenarios, that narrows down what you need to do per situation, per engagement, and what options you need to select. Like, let's say if there is a linear option, my opponent is a Cayenne, for example, and he goes in for a heavy. That is a straight line. If you play Nnoitora correctly, what are you going to do in this scenario? You guessed it, sidestep. Easy peasy. Free punish, free strike back for you. You can dash light, even though how slow he recovers, you will get a strike back every single time. You can also grab depending on the distance. You can also heavy. I wouldn't recommend it. You can also SFA depending on the distance. I wouldn't recommend that, though. That is very scenario specific. There's a lot of things to keep as a rule of thumb when playing Nnoitora. He is a simple character on paper, but fundamentally, if you are not keeping mind of any of these things, you're going to throw the game. That is just a 100% fact. Now we're going to be covering over the management of the fighting spirit and spiritual pressure meter. This is going to be a very small segment to the video. Me personally, it's pretty easy to manage these things, but there can be some matchups like, let's say, a squishier unit where you're having a tough time to just limit the amount of damage you're doing without throwing the lead. This game is very stalling specific. Thing is with Nnoitora, he's a character that relies on pressure. You'll find this as a common trend. It sucks. It sucks. There can be matchups where you're absolutely winning and you have to go for the 3 turn because you rolled too hard. And now all of a sudden, your opponent is winning. Nnoitora suffers from that heavily. He suffers from that heavily. So, learning how to manage your spiritual pressure and your fighting spirit is one and the same. Knowing when to SP1 and the SP2. Whenever you use an SP move, you get roughly 10 to 15% of your reverse gauge back. So that is another thing to keep in mind there. Optimizing for just SP1s is definitely not the pick, as you can essentially destroy your opponent's health bar unintentionally. Going for cashback is crucial. Always having a good uptime on reverse, or at least having a flash step somewhat available. Or if you need to SP1 to get that last little bit of health down on your opponent so you can get the kill, that works too. Never be afraid to use your resources when necessary, but there are also times where it is one and the same. Just because you use this other resource doesn't mean you can't use the other one. Having uptime on SP2 is very crucial as well, as you can punish ho-hos with it. I'm not too sure if I touched up on that last video, but if I did, then I will come back here and edit this out. In the meantime, that is something to keep in mind of. Always having at least somewhat of a SP2 available, high meter gain, is crucial. Remember, his fighting spirit gain is buns. It's horrible. It's horrible. He does too much damage for his own good in a lot of matchups, and he loses because of that. However, characters like, let's say, Dangai, Chad, Kenny, Kamamura, Shunsui, any character that is relatively tanking that can absolutely respect his punishment, your fighting spirit gauge is a little bit going to be closer on those matchups. Those are a lot more of Nnoi's closer matchups. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily close in the sense that, oh, I can totally lose this because he has a lot of damage and he has a 6-piece. No. It's because of how much damage they can also do to you and also how their fighting spirit works, how their meter gain works. There's a lot of moving parts to this character, albeit simple, so do keep that in mind. And one glaring example of that is learning when to play patient, especially utilizing your SIG, utilizing your armor. You can win scenarios like this. If I didn't have armor and if I didn't correctly guess that my opponent was going to let loose of his SP2 and I did a correct SFA, he would have been able to blue, he would have been able to break out, or if I didn't time it correctly at all and it whiffed and it dropped, I would have gotten destroyed with the SP2 from Kenny, he would have got strike back, and he would have won the game. So learning management of SP2, learning management of SFA, learning management of all of your tools in your kit, depending what scenario it is, it can either win you the game or lose you the game. That is a common trend through every other character, and I cannot stress that enough. So always be mindful of the scenario that you're in. Never spam the same move unless it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's just the best way to put it. Also, characters that have Oki that you necessarily cannot punish. However, let's say a character like Ichibei, if he were to do a SFA off of his Hakugeki, you can SIG there. You can punish him. And not only that, you can just abuse that to your advantage. When playing into Ichibei, it's weird. Personally, I'd utilize my SIG as much as I possibly can. Mix-ups are crucial against this character because if you do not respect any of his mix-up, he will punish you for it, which is very thin, to be honest with you. Ichibei really can't do much, but he does have quite a bit of frame advantage against you, especially in base. Nnoitora's light is horrible, so do keep that in mind in that matchup. Learning to be patient in those scenarios definitely helps out quite a bit. So just keeping that as a rule of thumb, being patient. You don't have to be patient all the time. You don't have to hold block all the time. But that doesn't mean that you can't hold block at all. Please keep that in mind. This game is like chess. You have to be in your opponent's head and you have to wait either for a mistake or you have to just simply wait for your opponent to guess. You're trying to get in your opponent's head, they're trying to get in yours. If you whiff a button and they know about it, they're going to backstep, they're going to ho-ho, they're going to do something to punish it. This is a traditional fighting game. There's always moving pieces of this game. And a character like Nnoi, he relies off of pressure. He relies off of bad decision making. If you do not have that viability to that character, you're not going to get much out of him at all. So do keep that in mind. Now, when discussing disadvantageous matchups, we're going to be going straight into Byakuya. Byakuya is absolutely hell for Nnoi. His buttons are quick, his range is very, very specific. It is extremely hard to get inside Byakuya's dead zone. He has an answer for almost everything. Nnoi cannot raw punish Ho-Ho him. He's just essentially forced to play it completely patient. So sidestepping on his lights and where you could find windows that you know your opponent's going to mash, like for instance, let's say they do 2 lights on your block, and they're going to do it again, always have a window to sidestep. That is crucial with this character. Angles are so important with this character. Please remember this. And another disadvantageous matchup would be Stark. I know a lot of people are going to call me crazy for this, but I'm telling you this right now. In Evo, it can become a little bit troublesome, especially against a good Stark. That doesn't mean that it's a completely helpless matchup for Nnoi at all. However, it is Nnoi favored. It's just frustrating. It is just frustrating to fight up against a good Stark. You are never going to have the ability to get up close to them if they play it correctly. So, which is why you need to keep them into Oki and abuse their base as much as you possibly can. The best way to play up against a Stark, in my personal opinion, speedrun them. Go for yellows. Don't even worry about Evo. If you play it correctly, you can force them to go for the 6-piece or deny them the 6-piece. Me personally, I like to deny them the 6-piece. I like to deny them the 6-piece. But if I can get them at a point where them using their 6-piece sacrifices their own Kompaku so I can get my arms and they lose access to their 6-piece, I will do it if necessary. Now, going back to Byakuya, this clip that I'm showing above was with my league match with Billy a while ago. Not much has changed since then, but this is pretty much what this is pretty much what a Byakuya matchup is going to look like for Nnoi. It is, as you can see, it's looking pretty fucking bad. Thing is with Nnoi is that he does devour early game, so always just trying to play it patient in Evo as best as you possibly can is the way to go. That is how you beat this matchup. Just play patient, wait out windows, do the best you can. That's going to be a common trend with a lot of these matchups that Nnoi struggles in, is because of his speed and where he lacks in. A lot of other characters that have that ability to punish him or get him away where he can't do anything, like let's say a character like Shuhei. It's a really bad matchup. A lot of people say it's a lot closer than you think, but a good Shuhei will always keep Nnoi in his dead zone, always punishing him. It is just going to be hell getting inside that circle of doom. Next thing you know, you speedrun him, he gets the 6-piece, you're dead. SP1 loops you to death. Something you do not want. But what you do want is to keep the pressure on your opponent. I'm never going to stop saying it. That's just how this character works. Now, with that being said, I know I got a lot out of the way. As I've been recording this, I've been sitting here for a couple days now, recording over, let's say, maybe 3-4 hours worth of footage and trying to comprise it into 80 minutes. It's a lot. It's a lot, I know. It's a lot. It's been a long road since I played Bleach. I met a lot of good people. I met a lot of awesome people. Some of you, if you guys are watching, you guys know exactly who you are. Thank you. It's one thing I do love about this game is that the community is super duper homey, very warm and welcoming. And this passion project I've been putting out for a very, very, very long time. I've been working on this for a very long time. I wanted this to be as professional as I possibly can. I know I might have lost a couple things in the guide. I tried to make this as concise as I possibly could, and I wanted to make it to where it was at a point where I felt it was fit. The whole point of this is that starting off on Bleach, there was no concise Nnoitora guides at all. I can even just back this up by like search logs and everything. The most you'll ever find is people actually playing the character and know how to plays on this character, and that hurt me, especially with how the community was so welcoming and so warm. It just made it such a it made it so hard to actually improve on the character. And then I started getting better at the character, started meeting the people I met, fighting a lot stronger people, getting my name out there, which, albeit at first I really didn't like. I'm not exactly a social person. But after meeting and fighting those people, I got to learn things that nobody else learned. And here we are. Here we are. My personal experience when playing Nnoitora was high octane, super duper fun. Uh, I have hundreds of clips on my Instagram. I'll link it in the description of me playing from launch, and just it's always been a blast. This I really do not want this game to die at all, and I wish the best for its people. I wish for the best for the community. So I'm gonna do the community at least one service and actually try to put this out, and hopefully people will enjoy the character the same way I did. Getting a little bit teary-eyed here. Anyways, I just want to say thank you for buckling down with me and listening to everything I have to say, see all the cool things I get to show you. And all I want to say to you guys is to like, subscribe, take it easy out here. Just want to make sure you know that you guys are loved as much as you are. Bye.